talking about building a brand and personal branding. And we talked a little bit about this authenticity and consistency. Gabrielle, how important is it that an executive leader practice what they preach on and offline? And what should maybe executives be aware of when they're expressing points of view?
Well, definitely, it's extremely important, the consistency, because that's who you are. It's the authenticity. Some have different social media or professional profiles, very different. You might have, or you might be wearing a suit on your picture on LinkedIn, and then on your Instagram, like, you might be doing or a party with a beer in your hand. And so that type of inconsistencies, you want to build the brand. And very importantly, first of all, positioning yourself. How do you want to position yourself out there? What is more important for you, for your profile, for your reputation? And so consistency and authenticity is definitely very, very important, and you can see it immediately. So yes, no, definitely authenticity, it's being genuine across all platforms, and consistency across all platforms, and be very mindful of, again, your message. How do you want to position yourself? You cannot find, sometimes we do a little bit of in-depth search on some candidates, and you see this perfect LinkedIn profile, and then you start doing some research in other streamlines, and it's just completely the opposite. And so there's no congruency and what you're positioning or trying to position yourself in LinkedIn versus other platforms, or just the website or the internet itself. You might find some other comments that are not congruent with your LinkedIn profile. So that is something that it's really a red flag. So just be careful of what you put out there, because the internet has everything. So be careful and be mindful of what your comments are, and what platforms, or your reviews of anything. If you use certain language, but then on your LinkedIn you use like impeccable language. So it's kind of that incongruency that we find that it's always a red flag.
Great. And one thing we actually offer on BlueSteps for members is we have a Mint's social media audit. And it will audit your social media profiles and look for any potential red flags. So if somebody is interested in seeing if they have anything that might be considered a red flag, you can do a social media audit through BlueSteps. And I think it's a great tool just to try out and see if there's anything out there.
Cole, I would offer, this is kind of the advice that I offer my children, grown children now. Don't say anything, comment on anything that you wouldn't want everybody to see over time, because it's going to be there forever. There is not a week that goes by, like Gabriel just said, where we're conducting a search. We do social media negative background checks, even at preliminary levels, where things pop up. Comments that were made about social causes or political candidates, or, I'm not talking about DUI and other offenses, but comments that are made. We see that, and I often do candidates a favor to say, just so you know, this popped up. And I've never once had somebody say, "Oh, I'm so glad I said that." No, but rather we need to be thoughtful to know that this is out there forever. So be really careful about what you even like. With a thumbs up, it pops up.
Correct.
Yeah. We had a webinar on background checks, and the one I thought was interesting, it wasn't just your social media profiles, but they even look at your like Amazon wish list, which so I thought that was pretty interesting in terms of what can come up in your audits that are done. So just be mindful of those. As we're talking about that, and we'll go into, Greg, what are some common mistakes executive leaders can make when they're curating their personal brand?
I think it would be avoiding being overexposed. So again, back to the frequency comment. We've all watched this where we let somebody into our world and we continue to see daily comments from them on things. That gets tired, and there's one quick way to mute that. So think carefully about how to avoid overexposure. The other piece is there's a fine line in building your own brand and touting your own success versus that of the company and your team. So I suggest to people, stay in your lane, comment on things where you have a point of view, where you have some level of perceived expertise, where people begin to respect and follow you. And in topics that are outside of your domain, simply don't go there.
That's great. That's great advice. Raphael, what are your thoughts on common mistakes that leaders might make when building their personal brand?
Well, Greg said before, don't put a picture doing some crazy things, because that's not relevant, because it might really convey the wrong message. But I think this is a common thing we've been keep repeating. Being consistent, not only about what you post, what you say across all the social media. Number one thing, I think if you want to post something, which you have to do, if you are really to stand out, has got something intelligent. Because if you and stay away, as Greg said, from any political, racial, or any kind of sort of DNI comment, because this is not really smart, in my opinion. So you have to pay attention, or really what you do, and post something that is relevant and that can be useful for other people, but not just post for the sake, how good I am, how big I am, what I did. I think it's more, let's say, I had the luxury to work with a company that gave me the opportunity to do that. That's a better way to put it. You see what I mean? So you shouldn't say me. I should say we. And they should say, we have achieved something, we are proud of this, that kind of thing. I is not really a good way to build your credibility as a leader.
Mhm. I want to add something to what Raphael said. It's just, and that's pinpointed what you read a lot of resumes and LinkedIn profiles, and when you're doing this selection, and you can really perceive a personality behind the lines when there is a lot of ego in there, or when there's a lot of humility, a lot of gratefulness or thankfulness. I really go for the person or the personality that is really humble and is really always grateful and thankful for all the opportunities. I go for those, because the ones that, like Raphael said, and they're just posting that I am the winner of this and winner of that, and I don't know, maybe, and then you see consistent of a lot of job hopping or changing jobs, then it throws you a red flag, like, okay, what is going on? Is this somebody that thinks that they're better than anybody and they don't find the right fit? That's why they change jobs. Or when you see this type of profiles that are very grateful on their comments and congratulating or adding value in their comments and their likes, not only talking about themselves. So that's definitely something that I look for: humility, gratefulness, thankfulness, and sharing and adding value to your audience.
Great. That's
I do
great
think
input.
I do think the idea of adding value and commenting on a personal interest story outside of your domain expertise is okay. But I don't think most audiences, depending on the channel on LinkedIn, care that your fourth grade son scored a touchdown in the football game.
Exactly.
That's a proud parent moment, maybe better suited for Instagram or Facebook, I think. So again, just thinking about how do you selectively grab stories that might be of interest. And because there's human interest stories, like we were just talking about Capgemini, the CEO, you said, love that. Something, a great music piece or a bit of history that's not directly relevant to his business, but that makes him more interesting, right? And I love the idea of it.
Exactly.
Since we're talking about what you look at on a LinkedIn profile, Gabrielle, is there anything else that you look at when you're reviewing someone's LinkedIn profile?
Well, definitely, I like to see. I'm very curious of who they are following, and it's very important what groups you're following, what companies you're following, and the way you position yourself as a candidate or as a consultant or as a subject matter expert. It just, gives you a lot of information on how you are, your train of thought or your positioning is working and where you are. I see sometimes some profiles, as everybody has mentioned, they seem kind of, and I understand, of course, when everybody's looking for a job and they have their commitments and they have to pay the bills, they come across as a bit of, very desperate. And so you can feel that. And so just be careful with that. And frequency is important. But more than that, again, going back to positioning yourself, how do you want to position yourself? How do you want to be perceived? That's the personal branding. Sometimes either you're a candidate. Do you want to be a candidate, a strong candidate, so everybody can see what you're made of, and then companies can hire you, or we can find you and represent you as our candidate? Or do you want to position yourself as a consultant? I mean, where is that path leading you? Because again, is the information, it's the groups that you are in, it's the companies that you are following, and I don't want to go to AI because that's another thing, but AI is learning and is hearing and is reading you. And so the groups that you are in, the people that you are following, the industries that you are following, everything is intelligence, and it's following. It's, everybody has Instagram. You can say, I like traveling to Switzerland, and the next day you have this, posts of Switzerland traveling and trains, and it's just incredible AI how it's working. So very careful of how do you position yourself, because then you might confuse the people that are trying to find you, or what you want to achieve in your LinkedIn profile. You want to be a consultant, you want to be a candidate, or you want to be an expert, matter expert. So just be careful of very clear positioning on your LinkedIn profile.
Gabrielle, one of the questions that we have is whether somebody should put the I'm open to work if they are open. Anyone have any thoughts on if they should have that on their LinkedIn if they are open?
Oh, that's a good one. And I think that was put by LinkedIn on COVID, because there was, a lot of layoffs, and everybody was scared, and no one knew what's going to happen with the world. So they came up with this, I'm safe, or I'm looking for work. So this was made in that period. I don't know. I would have second thoughts on putting that there. Definitely, one, because if you're employed, well, that's not a good sign for your employer. But if you're unemployed, then I don't know. That's a good question. I would suggest not to put it there, and let the curiosity of the consultants in executive search find out, and that'll give you a little bit of opportunity for them to contact you and ask you if you are open or not open. So I don't know. It's kind of being a little discreet about that, and not throw it out there. I think LinkedIn, I was surprised when LinkedIn came up with that, because I don't know, it's like putting yourself out there on offer. I don't know, for a professional, I myself, I don't see it as a good strategy.
Great, thank you for that. Helen, what do you look for when you're reviewing a candidate's LinkedIn profile?
Well, I'm going to go back to basics here, is your LinkedIn profile up to date? This is what today's all about. Investing time in really tempting me, or tempting us as an industry to want to know more. If I've got 2 or 3 candidates, one of whom has nothing apart from just their roles, and I have another candidate who has a little bit of information, and then I have another candidate who has their entire CV. I think I don't need to know anymore. I've got everything I need from that person's CV. But if you tempt me with metrics, with reporting lines, with your authenticity, then I'm going to make contact with you. So I think it's about that balance, really, of not giving away state secrets, because obviously it's publicly available. But it's really important, I guess, to really be mindful of thinking about who the audience is that you are creating a LinkedIn profile for. It's for employers. I love what Greg was saying, that actually, graduates will actually look at LinkedIn profiles, or even, people who are in processes with us. They'll look at the LinkedIn profile of their line manager, the board, the CEO, and the power that those executives have to represent the company's brand is just amazing. So I think it is about just making sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date. Who do you want to create that LinkedIn profile for? And can you tempt me to want to know more? And also, is your location correct? The number of times I've been in touch with candidates and they're not even in the location that I thought they were. So just standard things like that.